Okay. All right. We are officially on a live. We did a clap in because we're also syncing some cameras here for an edit because 2025 is the year that I finally take action on a podcast that's always been on my mind. And I feel that sometimes you have to finally do the things that you're being called to because if not, you continue to wonder, why didn't I do it sooner? So 2025 is a year, and this year has also been full of twists and turns. We're talking new presidency, we're talking tariffs, we're talking all kinds of stuff that's going on with the economy, and there's a lot of uncertainty in that. So I think it's a good time to really launch a podcast that's not just about what apparel and everything that we continue to do. We'll continue to do that, and we'll also be answering your questions live and throughout the chat on that, but also about how do you overcome these different challenges that you may be facing, whether it's in business, whether it's in life, whether it's in relationships, whether it's in health. Entrepreneurship really is it's a lifestyle. And when I say it's a lifestyle, it's not just a clock in, clock out. It's everything that you do around that lifestyle that makes it something that is enjoyable and really fun and great, or something that is miserable and you just want to give up. So the whole purpose of this podcast and of this show that we're officially calling the From the Ground Up Show is all about the mission that I finally found, or that I finally reconnected with, because everything that you do in life needs to be led by a mission that you live by. And if you don't have a mission, I find that it's really easy to start swaying off in different directions and going into this circle where you're not really sure what you're doing or why you're doing it. So the mission of this show and the mission of this podcast is that we help men break their limits and discover their true potential through the journey of entrepreneurship. Now, that's something that finally came through to fruition for me this year. And again, I wouldn't have done this podcast without having a reason and purpose for it. So that purpose is the mission. And how do we impact you watching to not just start a brand, but really create a lifestyle around what you're doing, and a lifestyle that's healthy and that helps you grow. It helps you grow in all aspects of life. So that is the goal of this podcast, and that is the goal of this show. If you're watching this on a live stream, then it's going to be available on the live streams for next few months, and then we're eventually going to transition to a new channel, which we'll link in the description down below, so you guys can go subscribe to that. But when it comes to, I think one of the things that is important, you may be wondering, okay, well, is this just going to be another guy talking about business stuff? And, why share this information? Well, the first business I had, I was 19 years old, right out of high school. I was in college. So it started early. The entrepreneurship journey for me started at 19. And today, we've literally hired, fired, office spaces, warehouses, overhead, bills, taxes, payroll, everything you name it, of running and operating a business. I've been in the trenches doing this for the last 10 years, and it's been an incredible ride. And then when I had my kids, everything completely flipped, right? There's a new level of focus. There's a new level of drive, and there's also a new level of, why are you doing this? What is your mission? So I've been married now for the last 8 years, been together with my wife since we were like in our late teens, 19. I was 19. And yeah, so we've kind of gone through this journey of relationships, dating as boyfriend, girlfriend, going to college, starting a business, having a full-time job, to now having kids, 3 of them under 5. So I feel like I can come and speak to you guys from a different perspective, from a different angle. And more importantly, I could also learn from you guys. Some of you guys that are out there right now that have already had kids and have been through some things, I'm always down to learn, and I'd love to have you on the show. So always make sure you check out the description for more information on how you can join us up here, share your story, more importantly, share value to everybody else that's watching, because that's ultimately the purpose of this show, to bring you more value in order to continue to help your journey, make it easier, and more importantly, build a business that helps you make money and provide for your family. So when it comes to entrepreneurship just in general, I think sometimes we kind of box things in, right? And we kind of put things in a box. We like to keep things in a box. You have your job, you have your family, you have your business, and then there's no like commingling, or it's very hard to commingle. But this last week, I think what was really interesting for me is I finally had a chance to just break away from the everyday business and just take off for a week. Now, it's been the first vacation, the little I don't call it a vacation. When you have kids, you realize there's no such things as vacations. We call them a family adventure, because you don't know what you're going to get yourself into. And a lot of times you get into some things that are like, yo, this is not relaxing at all. But you enjoy it because it's an adventure, and you make so many incredible memories that you come back fueled by a new experience and a new desire. So for me, during this trip, we took it out to San Diego. We were at Coronado Naval Base. Shout out to all of the military people out there, all you guys who have served your country, serve your community. I want to shout you out and just, man, I've always wanted to be one of my life paths. If I didn't make it into the police department, because I actually was a police cadet for a good 4 or 5 years ish, worked full time, went to school full time, had my business on the side. Yeah, I wanted to serve my community or serve my country, but I didn't get a chance to do it. But my wife's parents and family is all military, so we had access to the Coronado Naval Base. And if you guys haven't already known or seen, that's where they filmed Top Gun. That's right, Top Gun Maverick, the first one, was all held right there. I got to visit the bar. We got to hang out with friends. So cool. So during that trip, though, what was really interesting about that trip is that my son turned 3 years old, and that third birthday was a reflection to me about like, wow, 3 years have passed since your son was born. And during that time period, my health was not good. My mindset was not all there. And I had a lot of stress in all aspects of business and life. We had just hired so many people. We literally had this whole office full. I think we had like 8 people in here at any given time. And we only have 3 little rooms. So it was hot. It was a lot of stress. It was a lot of emotions and a lot of personalities to manage. And it was a very interesting transition of my life. And I actually feel a little sad that I didn't get to enjoy my son when he was little, like a little toddler, like under 1 year old, because that was my essential life during that year. It was very stressful, and it was like managing a second family with a bunch of kids. Shout outs to everybody that stuck around, and more importantly, to everybody that helped guide me through that process, the people that worked here as well as mentors. So with that, the third birthday comes around, and all this kid wants to do is, hey, I want to have a jumpy castle on the beach. So that's what we did for him. We were on the beach. We brought him a jumpy castle. He had a blast. But as we were leaving San Diego, I wanted to share a story here. And this is a real story about how entrepreneurship or business ownership, like what level of detail we should be thinking about. Because sometimes we just think that it's whatever you're transacting with. You have a product, come and buy it. You don't want to buy it, get out of here, right? Like that's what entrepreneurship or business ownership oftentimes really feels like. But going to this experience for me was a little different. And it was different because it was just an everyday, like any day. We were just driving. We were finding our taco shop. And it was called Taqueria Revolucion. I think it was Revolucion, Tacos Revolucion. It's in San Diego. Incredible tacos. And next door to it was a donut shop called Randy's Donuts. And at these Randy's Donut shop, we ate our tacos. It was good. My son got to taste horchata for the first time. He loved it. He absolutely loved it. Said it tasted like chocolate milk. And now we're going to this donut shop. And at this donut shop, you got some, younger girls, maybe like 18 to 22, working the counters. And we just ordered donuts like any other day. But this is where things got really interesting. As we were checking out, my son was there. He was choosing his donuts. He had finished his food, so he was going to get a treat. And as we were checking out, my in-law comes up and says, Zion, have you told her yet that it's your birthday? And he's like, yes, because he was telling everybody it was his birthday. He was just so excited about it. And he said, yes, I just turned 3. And he said this to a lot of people all over our trip. And everybody's just like, yeah, good job, buddy. So that's all we thought was going to happen. I thought it was cute. We're going to move on, pay for the donuts. We're out of there. But instead, he says, yes, I just turned 3. And the girl says, oh, you just turned 3? And he's like, yes, it's my birthday. And she said, oh my God, I have something special for you. She goes to the back and she grabs a bunch of little donut bites. And she says, pick the donut bites you want. She gives him like 10 or 12 of them, just like, it's for you, buddy. It's your birthday. Amazing. Enjoy. And just like that, my son's face is just lit up like, oh my God, I get all these donuts. And I'm just like, oh wow, that was such a nice gesture that I never expected. But not only that, it was a great experience. Like her interacting with my kids, she was incredible. She was so good with kids and she was so good with customer support. Randy's Donut has an incredible employee at that business, is what I'm trying to say. But the takeaway for everybody else that's watching and listening may be wondering, okay, what is it about a donut, John? Get on with the story. Well, the donut really symbolizes sweetness and greatness. It's the treat you give yourself. No, it's what I want to relate it to in the story is the fact that small gestures that mean a lot to the person you're giving that gesture to can be the difference between getting a repeat customer, word of mouth, or closing a business transaction, and just it being an everyday encounter. Right. So what I'm talking about is my mentor always said, hey, find what's important to the person that you're trying to do business with. Is it their kids? Is it a certain hobby, a sport, a passion? Like, what is the person that you're trying to get close to or do business with? What do they care about? And if you can get that information, whether it's through social media, whether it's through, just talking to them and really trying to figure out what it is that they're into, like, you slide these things in conversations or just online before you meet with them. If you could find what's important to that person and you're able to put it out or express it in some way. In my example, my kids mean everything to me, right? Like I have my business, but I got my 3 beautiful children, all under 5. So they're incredible to be around. They're so much fun. They're a lot of work, but they're amazing. All right. So to me, anything that's a gift to my kids, I'm like, whoa, I'm remembering you, because I personally don't really care too much about gifts. I'm not really a gift receiver kind of guy. I'm more, but my kids, dude, like you make them happy, I'm happy. Right. So like that's one of the things that in business a lot of times we don't think about. So and it for your customers, obviously it's hard for you to figure out what your customers value, but sometimes just going a little bit above and beyond and offering your customers something that they didn't expect could be the difference between them just buying one time from you or them buying multiple times from you and telling all of their friends and family, or in my case, all of YouTube, on YouTube Shorts and everywhere I go. Like, go to Randy's Donuts in San Diego. They're actually really good donuts too. So that brings me to the last point in that story, is that obviously you could do everything so well, so nice, have a great experience, but if you don't deliver the right product, none of that matters. So at the base, at the foundation of everything you do is a great product. On top of that is the service and how you're going to get somebody to talk about that service or that product that you're offering. So to me, that was a super memorable trip. We had an amazing time. And more importantly, I was able to share this story with you guys that I hope can help take you to that next step in your journey. Whether you're already doing business or thinking about launching, how can you implement something to just go a little bit above and beyond and make people talk about you? Because recently I was on a call and one of the members from our brand owners playbook was like, John, would you be okay if we make a coloring book about your story? And I was like, a coloring book? That's cool. I'm down. Send me a coloring book so my kids can draw, right? Like I'm going to be championing her success because she's already killing it. After signing up to the brand owners playbook, she's already crushing it and all her team is killing it. I'm just so excited about them. And that all has to do with us building relationships with each other. How can we provide value to her and how can she, reciprocate it as a gift in some ways? Gifts aren't necessarily needed though. Sometimes we just want to champion what you have to do. But if you're trying to really, get closer to a certain person, like these are things that you can do, right? And a lot of times people don't necessarily think about that. So now, at this point, if you're watching this video on the live, I want to go ahead and let you guys know that we're going to be answering your guys' questions through the chat. So we're going to be monitoring them, answering them through the chat. And the ones that stand out, I actually want to bring on to here so we can actually listen to them. So we're going to be doing some Q&A in a very interesting way. We're going to make it better, but the idea is we're going to be answering your questions through the chat. So whatever questions you have, drop them in the chat on the live stream, and then we're going to be playing the ones that stand out to us and answering them in real time with a little bit more depth. Because sometimes when we see something as a question and a comment, we don't really have context, or the answer may not be the best answer you're looking for. So I want to really curate the best questions and give you guys the best advice. So in order to submit your questions, or maybe you want to join us on this podcast in the future, we're going to link the email in the description down below. It's submit@fromthegroundup.io. Again, submit@fromthegroundup.io, like you're submitting a question or a request to join us on a future show. We're going to link it down below. Now, we got the man Preston behind the camera. Preston, what's the first question that we got? Let's cue it up.
One of our listeners, Brian from Los Angeles, wrote in saying, "I'm seriously thinking about quitting. I've put so much into this business, but I'm burned out and wondering if it's even worth it anymore. Have you ever hit that point? What helped you decide whether to keep going or walk away?"
Man, that's honestly a very, very deep question. And it's a question that I think every entrepreneur has at times of difficulty in the back of their head. I felt this multiple times over the last 10 years. It's almost like a yearly or bi-yearly occurrence, like it's one of those things that always is going to creep in your mind when things are hard, because you think about it and then you're like, man, I got a friend and he just works 9 to 5 and he doesn't have to worry about things on the weekend, or you start comparing yourself to other people and you're like, why can't I just maybe do that? All right. But when it comes to like in terms of, because part of that question was about, have you ever hit that point, or have you decided, how did you decide to keep going or walk away? I think at that pivotal moment, like, how do you decide to keep going or walk away? It's a crossroads. You're at a crossroads. And the moment that you're like, okay, I've dealt with this long enough, right? I've been doing this thing for the last 3-4 years and nothing has changed. There's no progress, right? Sometimes I think it's important before you make decisions, and I think it's important for you to just practice this on a regular basis, is all about tracking progress, right? Because oftentimes when you're doing business or you're starting something up, you're not really setting goals or metrics, or maybe you are setting goals, but those goals are like, hey, I want to hit $2 million this year, but you're at $0 right now and you want to hit 2. Right? It's a very hard to go from 0 to 2 million, regardless of what the YouTube videos out there say about the 21-year-olds making $4 million a month. Like, those 21-year-olds probably had a decade of experience in playing with something that allowed them to go from that 0 to 2. But for everybody else, and for you guys watching, like, it's very important to understand that in order for you to see growth, you need to track progress. Right? And if you're not tracking progress, it's very easy to compare yourself to everybody that's on social media or online. And it's very easy to get discouraged. But if you're tracking progress, you could see, hey, this year I went from 0 to 50K. That's a big jump. Second year, I went from 50K to 100K. And sometimes it's not even just monetary. Sometimes it's, hey, this year I went from not knowing anything about design or products to being able to manufacture, to source, to get good price points, to get good margins. And I also know how to design now, and I have a team of designers, right? All of these are intangible things that sometimes, if you're not tracking, you could feel like you're not going anywhere. But let's just say you have been tracking progress and you're at a stalemate, right? And now you're just like, okay, what do I do? Should I walk away or should I keep going? Well, this is where it ultimately always leads to, what are you passionate about and what is your mission, right? Because if you could find a mission, a mission is what's going to guide you through the good and the bad, right? And if you pivot, as long as you have that mission, you know that you're pivoting in the right direction, and you know that you're going to be passionate about that pivot that you're going to make. Because without a mission or a direction in your life, you're gonna literally go from one to another, and you're always going to continue this cycle of trying to figure things out, and you're always going to be stuck in this rut. But once you figure out, what is my mission and purpose in life, right? That's the hardest thing to ask and answer sometimes, but working towards that and trying to get just a little taste of what that could be, and then working towards that in your everyday business and your everyday life. So if whatever you're currently doing does not align with that purpose and mission that you're called to be, then that's when you could decide, okay, I think it's time to walk away and pivot to something that gets me closer to my purpose and mission, All right. And obviously, entrepreneurship and business, by offering a product for sale, you're able to fuel growth. But in order to create the right products, you also got to have the right story and the right purpose and the passion. And the founder has to have the passion to push that product and that business. All right. So if you're not passionate about what you're doing, it's going to translate into everything that you do. Your team is going to see it and everybody's going to feel it. So in order for you to really hone in on that, you got to decide, what is it that you're passionate about? What is it that you're being called to as your purpose in life? And can the current business be the vehicle to get you there? And if it can, then you need to improve some things and you need to make sure that you're infusing that mission and purpose. And if that current business or service isn't that, then you need to find something that is and start segueing to it. All right. So I hope that kind of helps. But I always feel that whenever I talk to people, it always ends up into that, like, are you enjoying what you're doing or not? So let's head on over to the next question. I think we had another one. I wish I would have brought some water, but all right.
Way.
Okay. I think we got a question.
David from Sacramento shared this with us. Lately, I feel like I'm drowning in to-dos, and I can't find time for my family or even a decent night's sleep. How do you create space for your life outside of work when everything feels like it's on fire?
Okay. So, drowning in to-dos, drowning in work, drowning in your business is literally what 99% of entrepreneurship is. There's no such thing as a work-life balance. Got to go ahead and say that right now. There's no such thing as a work-life balance. It's always a juggle between one or the other. And it's more important to rephrase this in a way. You really want to juggle three things in your life. You want to juggle, one, your health. You want to juggle your relationships, which means your family, your friends, the people that you enjoy spending time with and that you should be spending time with, and then your business. All right, so there really is three pillars of entrepreneurship that everybody should be focused on. A lot of times we either treat it as business or life, right? And because of that, when you go hard on your business and you disregard life and health and everything else because you weren't tracking that, that's the recipe for potentially having some big success, but having horrible health and then having to deal with those issues 5-10 years down the line. So I don't want to necessarily name names, but I've met so many people that were super successful, very successful in life, and they were killing it. They were crushing it. And I always looked up to them saying, man, at 30 years old, I wish I was them, right? But then you got to ask yourself, am I willing to do the things that they're doing, right? And if you're not willing to do the things that those people are doing, then you shouldn't be comparing yourself to them. I knew this guy there. I knew that most of these people were literally like, they were grinding day in, day out with absolutely no attention to their personal health. And eventually it catches up to people, right? And that's just the name of the game. So when it comes to balancing your life and trying to juggle things with so many to-do lists, the biggest thing I recommend is a practice that I started 2 to 3 years ago. And it was really what helped center me in everything I do. And again, you don't necessarily get the fix immediately, but it's a long-term results. And it's about managing those three areas of life: your health, your relationships, and your business. For health, you need to put that at the priority of things, because without health, you have nothing. If you're in the hospital, if you're sick, if you're chronically ill, there's nothing you can do. You got to pause, you got to stop, you got to pay bills for medical expenses. Like, there's nothing you could do without good health. So health is number one. Number two is always going to be your relationships, and they're equally all important. So there's not number 1, 2, and 3, but I'm just naming them out. The second is your relationships. You have to know, and you have to kind of keep like your top of your priorities in your health and your relationships and in your business. So when it comes to relationships, you got to identify what are the most important aspects of relationships that you need to maintain. If you're married, it should be your marriage. If you have kids, it should be your wife and kids, right? Like, how do you keep a good bond and a good experience with them, regardless of what's happening in the business, right? But that's on top of making sure that you also take care of your health. So when it comes to health, you got to ask yourself, what are the things that I need to keep in check, right? You need to do a physical at least every year, and you need to figure out where your levels are. Where's your sugar? Where's your cholesterol? What are the red flags that are potentially popping up for you right now? And how do you fix them over the course of the year? And this is an ongoing thing, right? This might mean that, hey, you need to substitute your morning donut and coffee for a green juice, a celery juice, and maybe some oatmeal with no sugar, right? Like, you got to start changing little things. And it's the little things you change that are going to make the biggest impact. For your relationships, it's about, okay, well, I might not be able to spend every night with them, but the time that I do spend, the 1 to 2 hours in the evening, can I be there for them without thinking about work or on my phone or watching TV? Right? Like, what can I do with my kids to just make them have a lot of fun when I'm hanging out with them for an hour before bed? Right? And then on the weekend, dedicating that day or that 8 hours of just having an incredible experience. Right? Because childhood really isn't about everything you did. Like, I don't necessarily remember everything that my parents did for me, but I do remember those moments where we went to the park, where we took trips, where we had these experiences that were different, because the day-to-day just kind of blends, and you don't really know what happened on the day-to-day, but you definitely remember those experiences that they went out of their way to get you. So for me, it's about making sure to give my kids great experiences. And for my wife and our relationship together, it's about going on dates at least once a month right now that we have a newborn, but regularly, right? Before the third, we were having at least every week was a date night. So getting back into those practices is important, but there's always seasons of your life, and you got to be kind to yourself when you're in different seasons. Because if business is your priority, it's what pays the bills, then obviously that's going to take the majority of your attention. And it's going to take maybe 80% of your attention in brain share. And then the other 20%, though, you got to put 80% of your effort into, right? So you gotta balance things, right? There's some times where in business, you might take a step back to take care of your health or your family, or in business you go hard, but then you still go harder on health and family. All right, so for me to balance everything, it just meant waking up earlier in the morning. Right, it would be awesome to get 8 or 9 hours of sleep for me, but I've kind of found that I'm only going to get 6 to 7 max. So how do I get an incredible 6 to 7 hours of sleep every night? That's my goal. All right. So does that mean no strips? Does that mean making sure you don't eat after a certain hour in the evening? Like, I'm wearing an Oura, one of these Oura rings, right? So it tracks my sleep. It tells me how well I did. So I'm able to kind of tailor some of the evening routines to give me better sleep. And if I see a really bad score in the morning, I got to ask myself, what did I do last night that gave me this bad score? Oh, I ate rice and chicken at 8 o'clock at night. Like, it's still a healthy meal, but not at 8 o'clock, because your body's digesting things when you should be in really good sleep, right? So all of these things matter, and all of these things are very important. You should be tracking everything in your health, your family, and your business in order to feel like you're not on fire, right? Because the more that you can do this, the more you can focus on your business. So for me, it's always been about creating an incredible self-care routine in the morning. So that means waking up at 4:35, hitting the cold plunge, getting a good stretch in, getting some work done, hitting the gym, getting to the office. Like, that's kind of my routine. And in the mornings, I get to take care of my kids, get to see them play a little bit before I go to the office. When we're at the office, we're doing work. In the evenings, a lot of times I'm wrapping up some work and then putting them to bed. Right. And then on the weekends, we're hanging out, we're having fun. Right. So it's one of these things that entrepreneurship is never ending. So you have to make time for yourself, and you have to prioritize those 3 pillars. All right, let's move on to question 3. I think we got a question from, who's this one from?
Zach from Dallas asks, it seems that the market for clothing brands is super saturated. Everyone has a brand now. Is it a good business to get into, or should I do something else?
That's a great question. Zach from Dallas. So his question is, it seems that everybody has a brand. And to some extent, you may be right. There's a lot more people having brands. And I think the total number, like based on the market research I did, I think there's like over 1 million individual e-commerce sellers in the US. And apparel and fashion kind of have a big influence in that. So Is it oversaturated? I mean, you got a little bit over a million. There's about 400 million people in the US. So I would say that fashion right now is the most fragmented it's ever been. Historically, before e-commerce and individual sellers were able to sell products, retailers were the ones that kind of dictated what you were able to buy. All right. And the biggest brands owned the largest amount of market share. So right now it feels like everything is fragmented. Everybody might have their own brand. But what's even more important about, like not necessarily focusing on, hey, is the market oversaturated? Because nothing's oversaturated if you could capture a market, right? There's always brands that are coming in and leaving, and there's brands replacing them. But the brands that stick around are the ones that have built something more than just a product. They've built a community of people that are diehard fans, right? And those are the ones that have been around for the last 5-10 years. They're going to be around for the next 10-15 years. They just built something beyond the products that they're selling, and they've built a community, a family of people that all have similar values. So when it comes to starting a brand, it's not about, can I make a product? How much can I sell it for? It's about, who are you selling to? What do they care about? And what should I make that kind of, that makes sure that I can bridge that gap? And now they care about my brand because I'm creating things that they love. And they also can buy into the brand because it relates to who they are. So instead of thinking about just launching a product with some designs, think about who you're selling to. It's the most important part. And a lot of times people don't think about that. They just go out and find a trend, they sell it, and then they're like, oh, I made like $500, $1,000, and then they move on, and then they're wondering why things aren't selling. Everybody's copying my designs now. Everybody's going to copy designs, right? That's always going to happen. What they can't copy is a community and the diehard loyalty that you build in over time. That's what gets people to talk about a certain brand over just, hey, where'd you get that shirt? Oh, I got it on Etsy or on, Amazon. Like nobody knows those shirts that anybody wears from Etsy or Amazon. But when you see something, you're like, hey, where'd you get that shirt? I'm like, oh, this was from a brand, Odyssey. Like, they're really cool. They're on social media. You should go follow them, right? Like, you start building a fan base. It doesn't matter what products you drop because they're going to support it. All right. So it's always important for you to think outside the box when it comes that way. How can you build your community? Even before you launch your brand, what are you passionate about and what can you bring people around? And then what products do they want? All right. A lot of times people want to design a product and then go find a customer. You should find a customer first and build a community around them and then inject products. All right. Question 4. Let's move on to the next one. I'm really excited. These are great questions, guys.
Chris from Atlanta asks, I'm juggling a full-time job and my side hustle is finally gaining traction. I've met someone great, but I'm worried I won't be able to give the relationship the time it deserves. Any advice on how to handle that?
Okay. So he's got a full-time job, a hustle, and he just found the one, or one that could potentially be the one. It is a very interesting time in your life, Chris. It's a very exciting time in your life too. Like having a full-time job, transitioning to your side hustle, and then finding somebody that you really love or that you really love spending time around. Advice for juggling or advice to be able to manage that. I would say the most important thing, and this is coming from my experience. My experience was, I was working a full-time job. I had a part-time job. I also had a full-time college, and I had a side hustle, which was our first business. All right. So I was managing 4 things. Plus I had a girlfriend. Right. So like I was doing 5 things at 19 that I was just like, wow, I don't think this relationship's going to work. And I loved her, but I was like, she was going to school full time too. So I'm like, if this is going to work, it's meant to work now. Right. And the only way that it can work, the only way that it worked for me and the only way it works for people that are in that situation is that you're both understanding of what you're trying to accomplish. Far and none, that is the baseline. That is what you're looking for. Does she understand what your drive and mission and purpose in life is? Have you enrolled her into that life, vision, and purpose? Does she understand it? And does she support it? Right? If she supports it and understands it, you got a good one, right? But if it's one of these things where you're constantly battling for time and she's like, pushing you to like, hey, why are you doing that? You should be spending time with me. It's not going to work out. I'm just going to let you know right now. If they want all the attention and all the time from you and you can't manage your business and you can't manage your full-time job because you're stressed out about not spending time with them, I gotta say it's not going to work out. Like, you have to, you as a man need to know this is what you want to do. You need to be clear about your purpose, and you need to show your drive, not just talk about it, right? A lot of people like to talk about what they want to do, but they have no action behind it. You should be acting and showing things so whoever you find or fall in love with can see, wow, this guy's doing things. He's going somewhere, right? And if she sees where you're going and she's like, how can I help? That's the person that you should be spending time with. That's the person that you can invest time with comfortably, knowing it's going to pay off in the long run. Every relationship that I know of entrepreneurs who have crushed it and are killing it right now and started with girls in that mindset they all have an incredible relationship to this day, because their wives or their wives are literally helping them, and they're supporting them in that journey. And it's really hard to find today, Chris. So if you find this girl and if you've identified her as, hey, she has all these traits, she sees my vision, she sees the action I'm taking, the results I'm getting, and she's also willing to work with me on the amount of time we're spending, like having those conversations, taking each other out to lunch, like take her out to dinner and just let her know, hey, this is what I want to accomplish this year. I may not be able to spend every day with you, but we could spend the weekends together, or we can go on a trip once a week, right? It's about showing that you care in the time that you get, not about how much time you spend with each other. So that's honestly the best piece of advice I can give you. If she agrees and if she rides with you after you laying out, these are the rules, this is how I'm going to live my life, if she's still in, she may be the one. And more importantly, you don't want to wait too long before you commit. What I mean by that is, don't just drag her along. All right. Don't just drag her along and be like, yo, maybe one day we'll get married. If you don't see a real relationship with her, then you should let her know that, hey, I don't know if we're gonna get married, and I love you. Thanks for supporting me, but may or may not work out. Be very clear. All right. Don't just drag her along, telling her that you love her and that you're one day gonna figure things out. It doesn't work that way. You should let her know right out the gate that, hey, I don't know, this is awesome, but I just want to focus on me, right? And then it's up to her to make that decision and be like, you know what, maybe I should go find somebody else because this isn't going to go anywhere. Always let whoever you're dating know in advance what your intentions are, and it's just going to end up for the best. It's the relationships that you don't let your intentions know that end up spiraling downhill, and they end up dragging you so emotionally, so like all the energy just sucked right out of you because you didn't make your intentions and your vision clear. So it begins by that. All right. So take her out on a date, let her know, hey, this is what I want to do. This is the time I can commit. I love you. I want to marry you. Give me 2 years, give me 3 years, whatever the time frame you have, let her know. And then hold yourself to it, man. Because at the end of the day, if you can't hold yourself to your word, then what are you really providing out in this world, right? So just be upfront, be honest, be transparent, and the right one will come. All right. If it's not the right one right now, the right one will come. They'll see what you're doing. They'll appreciate everything that you're doing for them and everything that you've done. So don't overthink it. Just be transparent, man. All right. So those were some incredible questions, guys. I got to admit, these 4 questions, we went into detail, but I wanted to really think about and answer them. And of course, there might be some messages in the chats. We're answering them. My team's answering them. And more importantly, if you guys want to ask your question for an in-depth review here, make sure you submit those to submit@fromthegroundup.io. That is submit, SUBMIT, at fromthegroundup.io. We've officially launched the From the Groundup.io website, and through there you guys can get free downloads, a really cool e-commerce theme, a checklist to go viral with your brand, and more importantly, a newsletter that comes along once a week to help you navigate this journey of entrepreneurship. We built it for all the guys and all the girls out there that are killing it or looking to start and grow from the ground up. We have some amazing guests coming onto this podcast and into the show. And if you're watching and you got a cool story to share, would love to put you on. So make sure you hit submit at fromthegroundup.io. And more importantly, if you're building a brand and you're looking for a playbook, just make sure you check out the Brand Owners Playbook that we linked in the description down below. And I look forward to answering your question in a future podcast episode. Till the next one. And again, make sure you subscribe to the channel that we linked in the description, because in the future, we're going to be pretty much showing all the podcasts and lives from that channel. For the time being, we're going to go live on this channel and link you for the replay over there. So I'll see you guys on the next one.